Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hey everybody, welcome to my March reading wrap up and favorites discussion. So you know how we joke that January lasted for like 1,000 years and it just wouldn't end? Well, I feel like March was another one of those that just simultaneously flew by and also happened like so slowly, like it just took so long. This month I was lucky enough to be a co-host for Realmathon, which I have admired from afar previously, but this year I got to be a part of it. And I got to tell you, the single best part of it was all of the reading sprints and getting to hang out live with a lot of new friends, ladies that I had heard of some of them, but a lot of them I hadn't. I hadn't watched most of their channels before, and to be like brought into that and meet them and also interact with a lot of you who were participating was so much fun. And though as of now speaking this, I don't know whether the Monarchs pulled off a win or not. I don't know. But either way, I had so much fun, and in the future, whether I'm a co-host or I'm participating, I really look forward to doing that readathon again. It was honestly so much fun. I'll show off one more time the beautiful, well, I'm proud of myself, the beautiful spread that I did for it with all of our like prompts, both defending and attacking. I just had so much fun doing it. But we are here for the March wrap-up, so let's hop to it, okay? As always, I have just a couple little disclaimers before I go through this. Number one, I will just be talking about my top 5 favorite reads that I had because I read, as you will see shortly, 34 books this month, and so I just can't possibly talk about them the amount they deserve in a video like this. It will probably already be long enough as it is with just me gushing about my favorites, but you can see about you can hear about every book that I've read if you go and check out this playlist up here, which has my weekly wrap-ups where I go pretty, in depth on a lot more of these anyway. So this video will just be, I will talk about my stats, maybe a few things I noticed this month, because there were some very interesting shifts in my reading a little bit, which was really fun. And then I will talk about my top 5 reads, which include a new 6-star read, which is awesome. Getting on a roll here. There's been 2 in a row at least, so that's fun. But yeah, that's what we'll do in here. And then the other disclaimer is now I feel like I need to kind of like give these because of some sassiness I've seen in previous weeks with people being upset about how I do this. When I talk about my books, especially in my favorites of the month, I will go into a bit of depth of that. That means going into what the tropes are, going into what the plot setup is, and then kind of how I felt about it, and maybe even some key moments. So if you just want to know what these favorites are, I have them all listed down below. There's links so you can go and buy a copy for yourself. But when I talk about books, I gush about them. And I know the vast majority of you do love that. That's why you're here. That's what the Book Refuge offers that a lot of other places don't, is that I want to really sell you on a book, and sometimes that means giving you a bit of the tease, and if you don't want any spoilers at all, you just know that I liked the book, which doesn't always have to mean that you don't want to hear me talk about it, but you just know that you trust me at this point and want to give it a go. Again, I have the links to my favorites down below. You can go and snag a copy and just see if you like it yourself and then come back to this later. But that is what's going to happen in this one. We'll talk about stats, and then I'm going to gush and go into a bit of detail about my favorite 5 that I read. So let's get into it. So the month of March, I read 34 books, and there was 12,270 pages that I consumed them as. And then I read these in the formats of, I had 11 ebooks and 8 e-arcs. I had 14 ALCs or advanced listening copies, and I had 4 audios that weren't obviously reading assignments or anything. And then I had 9 physical books that I read. So that was really great. Yeah, so much for Jenn backing off on arcs. We've basically forgotten about that being a goal this year because there have just been so many. And April has an unprecedented amount, as we'll see. The subgenres of these books, is that the way I'm going to go? Yeah, let's go with that. The subgenre of these books is there was 17 contemporaries, 9 dark romance. This is what I mean. I did not realize I was having a shift towards the dark this month, but man, a quarter of my reading was all dark romance, which isn't normal lately. There was 2 sci-fi books, 1 dystopian, 1 erotic, 1 fantasy, 1 historical, and 2 that were suspense/other that I read. So yeah, very weird mix of things. I'm a little bit disappointed on the historical front. I'm hoping to pick up with that. The star ratings were, I had 1 new 6-star read. There was 5 5-stars, 4 4.5 stars, 16 4 stars, 3 3.5 stars, and 1 3-star read. So let's get into my favorites. Too. I really, really did enjoy this one. And so that is Deal with the Devil by Deborah Garland. So this was one of the books that I had an ALC for. I got it from, not Must Love Audio, I got it from the Author Agency, who, as I've shared before, the Author Agency also does offer ALCs sometimes, not for a ton of authors, but a few of them, specifically Deborah Garland. I've gotten all of my ALCs of them from the Author Agency. That is a PR team that I think does a really good job, and they have so many options there, by the way. And they're one that I've heard from other viewers, as well as some of my smaller like reviewer friends, that they've been accepted by a lot there. Like there's a really good chance of getting accepted with the Author Agency still, I believe. So definitely check them out if you're wanting to get into reviewing. That could be. This read is about Lachlan and Katya. I should say, this was narrated in duet by Troy Duran and Lexi Evans. And this one is a part of the Astoria Royals. I believe this one was book 4 or 5 in that series. I don't know. But Lachlan is a character we've definitely heard a lot about throughout the series. This is a series that I do recommend you read it in order, just for how you get information, particularly the book that's going to come after this one, because there has been some things in the background we've been hearing about for quite a while. And anyway, particularly Lachlan. He's this character we know about who he has killed a priest. We know that about him. He also had wanted to be a priest when he was young, and he killed a priest. And because of that, his family kind of forced him to go to this sort of like mafia assassin school type situation. They had to get him out of the country, and he has been kind of like, because of that, he's a bit shamed by his family for like killing this priest. Though, you know, you can maybe think up some reasons why a young man who was going to school to be a priest would kill a priest who maybe overstepped some lines. Maybe you see where I'm going with that. So basically, he has decided to himself that he's going to remain, you know, alone his whole life, be a tool for his family, do what they need him to do. He's an enforcer and an assassin and things like that. And that's what he's going to do. He's just kind of decided that. And again, we've seen him in other books pop up and protect his family or step in and do those different things. Well, when it comes to Katya, who she is, or Katya, I can't remember. She is actually the daughter of Bratva Pakan, but she is the bastard daughter of him. So she actually has a sister who's a couple years older, who was the heir to her father. And a few years back, her sister was supposed to be forced into an arranged marriage, and her sister actually ran away. Now, she kind of sort of helped her sister escape. She didn't facilitate it because she was younger than her, but she did kind of cover for her sister running away. And the consequence of that is that her father actually murdered her caretaker, who was responsible kind of for both of the girls, but more so for the younger girl. And Katya now has been basically on lockdown since her sister left. So she never had real plans, or the Pakan never had real plans for his bastard daughter. But now that his daughter that was going to be his bargaining chip has ran away, he has no choice but to use her for that. And so he's really tightened down on her, and she has the dreams of being a ballerina. She's still been going to school for that, but he tells her one day that, nope, now you have to be the one forced into an arranged marriage because you're the only daughter I have left to do this. You're going to do this for your family. See, you're getting to be treated like a full-blooded daughter, a full-bred daughter now because I need you to do this, right? Her father, she is also always suspected, is responsible for the death of her mother because, again, she was the child of his mistress, and when she was brought into the home, her mother had like disappeared, and so she's always suspected that her mother wouldn't have just left her, that she was kind of forced to. So anyway, where do Lachlan and Katya meet? So Lachlan and Katya had seen each other before at a few different events where when the Pecan and the Irish were like in a good place, and so she'd actually bumped into Lachlan before. He just thought she was this beautiful, delicate young lady, and again, not only was she at that point, like, she was underage and too young for him, but also he's remembered being closed off. But he remembers how beautiful and sweet she was. And so when he learns, because again, this is the stuff we've heard in the background, by the way. So we have heard of the Pecan's daughter having disappeared, right? This sister that went missing. We know that she's disappeared, and the Pecan has been trying to find her. And that is the thing I'm saying that you'll see throughout the series as you read it, is you know that this sister is gone, this daughter is gone. And now we're meeting the sister. We're getting more context of why she ran away. We don't know where she went. She told her, don't be in contact with me at all because he'll find you through me if you try to contact me at all. But anyway, so she's been on lockdown, and now her father is going to use her for a marriage to, I believe, like a mayor in Moscow. I can't remember, a mayor, governor, whatever. So she's not only going to have to give up her studies and be forced to marry this guy, she's going to have to move to Russia, and she's going to have to stop dancing, and he already has a mistress. He doesn't even want to love her. She's just his political plug-in, because if he's married into the Pecan will support his, run for like his political career. So she really is going to be used as this. And anyway, so Lachlan has like heard that this is going to happen. And there is like a party being thrown like for her engagement that, again, she doesn't even want to be there. She's being forced to be there. And at this party, the Irish have been invited because, again, they are allies of the Pecan, her father. And so when there's this party, like, she actually has a moment like alone with her future husband for a moment, and he's immediately being abusive to her. I'll never understand why they have to rush into that, right? I mean, I guess we wouldn't have our books if he was going to seem sweet, but he just rushes right into like, I'm an absolute dickhead. And Lachlan sees it, and he gets a weird feeling about it. But again, he's not supposed to mess up with this. He's not supposed to step into it. They're allies with the Pecan. He's not supposed to mess with it. But then we end up having a bloody wedding, which, by the way, let me know if you're interested. And I mean, I don't care if you're interested. I'm going to make the video anyway, but let me know if you're excited about it. I will be making a video that has to do with like groom gets killed on the wedding day, or there's a bloody wedding, because I've read so many of those through the years. I feel like I can make an oddly specific mafia wreck video. So let me know if you're interested in that. But that's what happens is Lachlan shows up on her wedding day, shoots her husband in the head, steps in and marries her instead. And what is kind of cool about this is that Katya is actually totally about it. I mean, she's a little stunned, a little bit shocked about this situation, but she has always thought Lachlan was good looking, but again, he's much older than her, and he was Irish, and she's just trying to survive under her father's thumb. So that is how things get set up. Now she's married to him, and he basically is just like, I just want to look out for you. I'll help you still get to do your dreams. Like, I'll make sure you get to dance. I couldn't stand to watch you get married off to him. I just couldn't take it. And so he rescues her from this. But now they've really pissed off the Pecan. And what are you doing, Lachlan? And his family is just like, you weren't going to do this type of stuff. Like, you didn't want a wife. You didn't want any of that. And he's like, yeah, but I kind of do. Oh, and also they need to consummate their marriage so that her father can't have it annulled. So that's going to be our first thing with that. So anyway, that is the whole setup of this one. And I ended up loving this for a few reasons. Lachlan was so sweet with her. One thing I do love about this series is that there are some wild parts to it. Okay, this series is pretty bonkers. And normally I've given the books 3.5, 4 stars in general, just because the series is a bit wild. But this one was so sweet. Like the way Lachlan was with Katya and the way that he sees himself as like a beast because of, you know, the work that he does and the murders he does, but yet his family honors their women. They absolutely adore them. And so that's part of too why he can't stand how she was treated by her father. And, you know, this beautiful woman he sees being treated this way, he's just like, no, 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 no. We're not doing this. We're not doing this at all. So yeah, all of those things just made it really great. And of course, he doesn't think he's good enough for her. So all of these things added together, I really liked this one. I also want to say, I think that the steam in this one was handled very well, very beautiful scenes with them together. I loved that. And it was all very good. Like, I liked that. I think it got a little bit wild in some other books she does where they are completely lust focused, and I liked that even though it was very minor, the fact that they had met when she was a minor, when she was younger, it meant that like Lachlan had just like some softer feelings about her that weren't just lust focused, right? They were that he thought she was beautiful and that he liked that she was a dancer. Like there were things that he liked about her that weren't just lust wise. And it was also a part of justice for him where he's like, you're not going to treat a woman like this. And we love to see it. So that was one of my favorite reads this year or month. Okay, next up was The Way We Score by Tia Louise. Now this was one that I just had bought the audiobook myself when the book came out. I read the previous book in this series and I enjoyed it a lot. I had an ALC for book 2 in the series, and I thought I would get an ALC for book 3, but the author didn't end up doing that with this one, which was fine. I was going to buy it anyway. So The Way We Score is book 3, and I believe is it the Bradford boys or the Bradford? I don't know, but it's a family, and they actually are this family of orphans basically, but their parents died together in an accident when the oldest brother, I can't remember how old he was. We had his story in a previous book. But this was one of the middle brothers, and they're all really into sports. They all play sports, and they're just very close. And this one is actually a second chance romance between Olivia and Garrett. They dated in high school. Their families were friends as well. And then they broke up when they both went to college. It went badly between them, and they broke up. And Olivia actually married another guy, and things kind of went downhill. She's actually a lawyer, and she's just divorced her husband, and she comes back to town for 2 reasons. One, there is her mom, well, I think it's mainly her mom, and then she ends up going to the wedding when she's there. But her mom has broken a bone, and so she's there to look out for her mom. And then she ends up getting invited to the wedding of one of the, previous couples, of course. And that previous couple is one of the siblings in this. So she is forced to see Garrett, who, they had such strong feelings for each other, even as teenagers, that it's just really hard to see each other. And they're both very hurt by the other one, though I will say Garrett is kind of the one who is a dick about it, I'm just saying. But also, because they were teenagers, the way that things didn't work out, it wasn't so awful that he was like, nobody cheated. It was just a difference of like, Garrett thought they were going to go to the same school together, and she wanted to go to a different school for her cheerleading. Like, she wanted to go to a specific school to be on like the cheer dance team or whatever, and he thought she would come to the school that he went to, and he just assumed that. So yes, he is being a bit like entitled that like his career would be more important or his wants were more important. But again, they were teenagers and they didn't talk this through, right? And so when she went away to school, she was like, we don't need to break up. And he's like, we're going to different schools, like it'll be too tough, like whatever. And so they broke up. And they've always been pretty hurt at the other because of it. But again, I, as the reader, wasn't holding a real grudge against either of them because they were kids. And it's a pretty typical thing to happen to them, right? So But they do have to struggle with it. And now I will say what I thought, like why this one ended up being 5 stars for me. So I'm not a huge fan of many flashbacks. I say that again and again and again. I just read one with flashbacks last night that I really skipped every flashback there was in the book because I really don't like them. I've talked about that many times. We won't get into that. But what I'll say about this one, how I think it did it well, is that there was only, I believe, like 3 flashbacks, and they were very pertinent at the time when they're brought up. It's not just like a chapter in regular time, a chapter in the past, a chapter now, a chapter then. Like, I get sick of those because I'm like, just stay with this timeline and only go back when we seriously need to see a situation. And to me, that's what they did. There was very sparing situations in the past, and I think the author handled them very well. And then they stop at a certain, like, there's only a few of them, right? So it's not through the whole book that we have to, because see, I'll just say it. I don't like seeing the build up to a breakup when we're seeing them fall in love in real time and we're being reminded of what broke them up before. I don't like seeing that because it makes me feel that I'm like having to watch the demise and then that. That's why whenever there's a book that's going to have that, I would rather just read the past, see them break up, and then when we meet fresh, we're going forward towards an HEA. That's just a personal thing for my brain. I would much rather have it the other way, right? And have like the time jump or have the prologue be what's in their past and then we're in present time for the book. Because I'm like, that's what a prologue is literally for. So you can give us information for. Anyway, why this one works for me is that there was just a few and they were very pertinent to what we needed. And it also does help explain some situations where when they're kids, you see them acting as kids, you know, and so when they're adults and they're arguing about certain things, we're like, yeah, you guys, you were kids. Things don't always work out, right? Like, give each other another chance. So anyway, enough explaining. This one is them being forced around each other again. After the wedding of his sibling, they end up having a one-night stand, and she doesn't know how long she's going to be in town for because, you know, she's only there for her mom's broken hip. She doesn't know that she would be staying. And he's still in football, like he is still planning to keep playing. But this is an accidental pregnancy. So they're now going to have to decide, like, are they going after their careers again? Or do they want to take this second chance with both hands and be like, we're going to make it happen. Like, we have to. So I, of course, won't tell you every little way that this lays out or when we find out she's pregnant or how it goes. But I found this so heartwarming. And then, of course, we have both, like, all of their friends and family around them who want to help. And I love that type of thing. So yeah, I love accidental pregnancies, and I especially love when it's in the small town and everybody else is kind of like, are you guys done fighting now? Like, just work it out. We're here. We want you guys to work it out. You guys are meant to be. We all know it. We've seen how miserable you are all these times. Like, just do it, right? All right. Next up, we have a book that isn't out yet. And I really, really tried to make sure, like, are you sure this is on your top, Jen? Because, again, I try not to be overly biased, but also I've told you that I am, and you can make the decisions you want to make from there. But I do have Firebird on my favorites. I really do. I love this kind of fantasy, and it was very dark, and it was thrilling, and it gave my belly the swoops and the dips. And I'm just so excited for how big this book is going to be. And as I said in a previous, which was the video that I mentioned this in? I think it was in the book haul that I put up. So I know not everyone watches book hauls, but when I did my weekly wrap up where I talked about this one, I had mentioned that Bramble wasn't being completely forthright about some of the trigger warnings in here. And I am happy to say that they have changed that, and they will be adapting not only in the book, but they're putting it out what it is. They've added it to the Amazon description. So though I wish that had been in there for all the pre-stuff, that is part of the ARC process and review process, is when you get information from readers and they tell you, hey, you need to have such and such of trigger warnings here. Hey, you need to have this and this there. That you take that and you do something with it. And they are. And so, you know, of course, I was always going to support Juliet no matter what. That doesn't mean I wouldn't be side-eyeing Bramble if they mess this up, right? Because I just would, you know? But anyway, the trigger warnings for this, will tell you up front, right, there is a master-slave dynamic in here, though I'll explain a bit deeper how that didn't really affect my reading. I know that people who aren't used to reading dark romance or don't, and I'm not trying to say they're dumb, okay? Like, I'm not saying they're not getting the nuance, like, whatever. Like, to some people, when one is a master and one is a slave, there's no room for that at all. And that is perfectly okay, particularly if you're not used to reading dark romance, or particularly if you don't like that thing. And I think letting, this isn't me saying people are too weak for it or don't like it. Like, I have friends who don't like it, and so I wouldn't recommend this book to them, right? Anyway, we won't go down that spiral again. I've made my point clear, but just in case this is the only video you're watching me, and I want to be clear that if you don't like that, that is perfectly fine, and you don't have to rationalize it. But for me, as a dark romance reader, I see more layers to this than what is just there by her being owned by him in the time period that it is. Like, there's more going on than that. There's also more going on than that is some spoilers to it, which I'm still like not fully able to tell you all of those because this book isn't out yet and I need to not say everything. But there is also more to Julian than just being a like slave owner in this time. Like, there's a lot going on in this story. But anyway, this is a dark fantasy romance set in ancient Roman times, and there's magic involved, of course, and there are dragon shifters who rule Rome at this time. And now, if you didn't know this, and this is something that I am a bit of a nerd for some ancient Roman things, so I did know, but I don't think the context that everyone would know. Basically, in Roman times, let me just dumb it down for you, okay? Like, I need to. I'm sorry. Anyone who like wasn't Roman was basically considered barbarian, or a non-citizen of Rome, and therefore was someone who needed to be conquered or, subjugated to Rome. That is what, Rome conquering all the things, right? And Julian, our male main character here, is a general and the nephew of the Caesar of Rome, and again, a dragon shifter, because that's who's ruling Rome. Now, our heroine, Alina, is that her name? Melina. She is with a barbarian group here who she's traveling with them in Dacia, which is modern day Romania. But it's also cool because that also reminded me of Cressley Cole and things like that, which is funny. And anyway, in the very beginning of this, we hear about a prophecy. There's these three sisters, each who have these different powers that have been left to them by a goddess. And Melina has a power of like, kind of like influence, as well as like healing is kind of how I would say it. Like, it's kind of hard to describe it fully here, but she gets captured and she's about to be assaulted by one of the commanders who got a hold of her. Like, he straight up is threatening to like rape her and kill her because that's what they're doing. And Julian, who is, as I said, one of the like generals above him, comes up and says, we're not going to be doing that. I told you, we're not going to be raping and pillaging. We will take captives or, move along. Like, we're not doing that. And when the guy gives him some pushback, he literally like rips this other dragon shifter apart. And he ends up being the one who takes Melina captive, as I said. And the way that that worked is she's now his slave. And so he brings her into his home and he makes her his slave. And he knows that she's people are going to hear of her being a witch because they did see her do some things to try to defend herself. So he knows that like Caesar's going to hear about her and going to want to get his hands on her. And Julian doesn't want her to fall into his clutches because, again, there's more to Julian than you will expect right away. There are things he's trying to do to undermine his uncle, but he has to be very subtle because if his uncle figures it out too soon, it's all over. So that means a large degree of playing along. Now, again, that doesn't mean he's completely innocent or he's free from the ramifications of what he has to do while he's working for this kind of like rebellion situation. But it does mean that when he makes Melina a slave and has her moved into his room to be his body slave, he's doing that more so for appearance's sake than for to actually have her do that. So, but there does involve her needing to be claimed by him. There is a slave collar she has to wear, which, you know, that I know from reviews was a big issue for a lot of people. But basically, that is now the situation you're in. She's within his home kind of being protected, but she doesn't see it that way. And she is actually in the room with Julian pretty much all the time. And so, yeah, that doesn't feel too great. And so they do fall in love during the time that she is technically his slave. But again, when people just hear that, they'll have one feeling. And reading it, I had a completely different feeling. But the situation is such that she belongs to him for most all of this book. But anyway, this was very intense, and there was so many layers that get put out to it. And I mean, I think I've said enough. I've talked about this book so much, and I'm just excited for it to finally be here. This is why I try not to read these books too early. But in this case, I was glad I read it early enough to be able to give trigger warnings to people, and also to be able to share my opinion on the fact that there needs to be trigger warnings for this. And so I'm glad that I read it early enough. That's something I want to do. I've had comments of you guys, a few of you canceling pre-orders because you don't want that, and plenty more of you who are like, ooh, I want it now, right? That's why you share. Trigger warnings are red flags to some people and they're green flags to other people, so that's how it works. But I loved their relationship. I loved the possessive protectiveness of Julian, the political games he's having to play, the risk that he's taking. And I also love Melina. I love that she was smart. I love that she does have quite a temper, and she is, you know, the injustice of her being taken from her sisters and being made a slave. Like, it's not lost on her. She's not some docile creature, but she is smart, and she knows that lashing out and going scorched earth, pun intended, won't necessarily help her if she does it at the wrong time and to the wrong person, right? So I like that she was smart. And yeah, there was just a lot about this. I also like that this isn't a super long fantasy. This is also a interconnected standalones. Now, they're standalones as in it's one couple per book, right? As I said, there's 3 sisters. The next one is going to be, you know, another sister, and I won't say who the male is yet. But that book is going to be, let me show you, we have the title. Book 2 will be Bloodsinger. And that will hopefully be out maybe like next January, February. We don't know. We don't have the date. It just says winter of 2026. So that can either be like early or it can be late, right? We won't know. But yeah, they're interconnected standalones, as in each couple will be different. But you'll need to read these in order because that's how it's going to go. But yeah, we do have a HEA or probably an HFN because like the war isn't over when this is done, but Julian and Melina definitely have an HEA at the end of this. So I obviously, for the level of gushing I did, you can see that I love this book. I will say one of the funny things about it is that they have this listed as a 4 chili pepper read for Bramble, and maybe it is for Bramble, maybe it is. But there are like, on the Jenn scale, it's like a 2.5 to a 3, maybe a 3, okay? And maybe more on the 3 because I mean, they do make love for the first time when she's still a slave. As I said, that's why the master's slave trigger warning needs to be there. When you read it and you're there, you'll have to tell me if you feel like she's coerced into anything or what the power dynamic is there. You decide. That trigger warning's there if you need it. That's not how I felt in any of the scenes. But again, I'm a dark romance reader. And on the dark romance scale, this is pretty tame. But it's not going to feel that way for probably mainstream people, right? And that's why I think it's important. So enough. I've said enough. You get it. Okay. Moving along. All right. Next up, you know, I said I had a 6-star read this month, and let me tell you which one it is in case you haven't seen me gush about this book enough already. That is The Girlfriend Zone by Lauren Blakely. Yes, this was a 6-star read for me. Okay, this is book 4 in the, what is it, the Love and Hockey series? I don't even know, but I love this. And I have loved this whole series, right? These books have showed up in a few favorites over since I first started reading this series last year. And they're just fun. They're heartwarming, they're sexy, and they're really great. And this one is now my favorite. I mean, obviously it's a 6-star. Previously, the first one was still my favorite, which I think was the boyfriend goal. The names, of course, are also similar, but the first one in the series was my favorite until this, which I gave that one 5 stars. And then the last ones I think have been like 5 and 4.5, but I love the first one the most. And I think why I like this one so much, it does have to do with that there are a few similarities to the first one. And that is that this couple, which is Leighton and Miles, they kind of like have the same first date type of scenario where they have this date where they don't know, who each other are yet. They have this amazing connection. And in fact, when Miles first sees her, and not because of how she looks solely, okay? He doesn't say, oh, her tits, I want those, or her ass, I just can't wait to slap it. He just gets this feeling from her aura and just how she looks standing at the counter at the coffee shop that he is thinking like, wow, this girl, she might be my future wife. That is literally his first thought about her, okay? Now that's going to be too cheesy for some people. I get it. But he's so good. It's just impossible not to want this to work. So these lovely two, we have, yes, Miles, who is a hockey player. He's a bit on the older side. He almost actually lost his career. He had an injury and he got traded to this, I think the Sea Dogs is the name of the team. I rarely try to remember the name of the teams, but I believe the Sea Dogs is the team. And the coach of the Sea Dogs actually gave him a second chance. And so he loves his coach. Like, really, he respects his coach so much. Anytime he has a thought about this man, it's positive. You can tell he very much looks up to this role model. And it's really, really great to, like, truly, I love to see that. And so he's a very joyous man. And though he's had a relationship go bad before, he had a woman who was basically using him for his fame. But wait, maybe that's not this guy. This might not fully be this guy. No, that's not him. Sorry. Let me retract that. Though he has had relationships go bad before, he's still very hopeful for love in the future. And when he sees this woman, he's totally into her. And in fact, his grandmother, who owns said coffee shop that he's in, kind of goes about helping him get this date. And we have Leighton, who she's actually a photographer. She also has partial hearing loss. She wears hearing aids. She had a illness when she was 16. So she doesn't have perfect hearing in loud spaces. It can be difficult for her. Just a few things that pop up through it. I really liked how that was played in this series or in this book. And anyway, through some things, they end up going on this date, and they go on this date and they don't really talk about their families or their careers. They just spend a day doing great things. They actually end up going geocaching together, which I was telling my friend Jess, and like, I have never went geocaching, but one of my dearest friends, that is what they used to do together. And it's actually how he proposed to her, was through geocaching. So when I heard that, like, they do geocaching for their date, I was, just that connection of, like, you don't hear about geocaching much these days. Like, honestly, it was pretty big in, like, the early 2000s, I feel like, when, like, GPS units and stuff were, people could do that and everything. Anyway, maybe I'm just making that up, but I remember it being kind of a thing then. And so anyway, they do that. They have this great day. They do have sex. She actually, as I said, she's a photographer, and he actually ends up helping with a photo shoot, but then the woman has to cancel. So they end up doing a photo shoot together, which was hot. And then they have a date. So they spend like the whole day together. And then he invites her back to his place for dinner, because he's like, let's have our second date right now. Let's have our second date right now, because I don't want it to end. And so she's like, okay. And so he brings her back to his place to cook. And this is sadly where things take a turn, because she now realizes he's a hockey player, which, again, they haven't talked about work or their families. They've just been getting to know one another. And honestly, that was kind of because of his grandmother, who innocently was like, don't tell her what you do right away. Just try to get to know her, right? Because his grandma doesn't want anyone coming after him just for his money, right? And she doesn't talk about who her dad is because he's a famous hockey coach. In fact, the very hockey coach that Miles loves. It's not an understatement to say, like, he loves his coach. He looks up to him. He respects him. And his coach has only ever talked about his two daughters in kind of like in not a joking way, as like making fun of them, but he calls them like, I can't remember it, but they're called like Mini 1 and 2. I can't remember. Whatever the coach's last name is, he calls them Mini 1 and Mini 2. He never like says their name. That's just how he talks about his daughters. And she loves her dad, who has been there for her, and her mom hasn't really been there for her. Her mom isn't very understanding of her hearing loss, whereas her father and her sister, they've learned sign language. They do their very best to, be as aware of her disability and like there for her as much as they can be. And so she loves her dad. And when she enters Miles' home and sees his hockey stuff everywhere and discovers he plays for the Sea Dogs, they both realize, oh no. And it honestly, like, it just guts you because they're so into each other, you guys. Like, they're so cute together. But what I love even more, this is hard to say, but I do love how they end things, because they don't blame each other. Like in some cases where you have this, they think the other person was lying to them. They genuinely know that neither of us talked about, like, we could have found this out, but like we didn't talk about these things and now we're here. And so they just agree. They're like, I'm so sorry. Like, they know what they're losing, but they both love this man so much. And they're like, this wouldn't work out well. And honestly, they don't know each other well enough yet to know that it'd be worth the risk, right? So they just back it off. Now we start to fast forward a little bit, and I know I'm talking so much, but this is a 6-star read, and I love it. And I warned you at the beginning what we would be getting into, so I'm just going to keep going. And she ends up getting a part-time job working with the Sea Dogs, taking photos. He is working on becoming a co-captain, and so we actually see them throughout this book. It covers some of the time that happens in the other books. Again, this series, you can read these ones out of order, like where I said about, like Deal with the Devil, how you should read those in order. You can read these ones out of order because a lot of them overlap. Like while we're making our way through Leighton and Miles' story, we see the fake marriage couple that was in another one, and we see the fake dating of another. It was the Married in Vegas couple. So like we see those things happening, and we now know that these two, they've been pining for each other through the whole thing. But what's beautiful, a couple things. I'll tell you one thing that isn't a spoiler, and then I will put up a little spoiler warning because I need to talk about why this book was 6 stars, and I've so far like hidden that from like my reviews so that it's a surprise. But because this is my favorites, I'll tell you. But one thing that isn't a spoiler is these two truly become friends. They are there for each other multiple times. He supports her when she's feeling nervous about her hearing aids in one of her classes and worried that she will never impress her mother. And she supports him when he is feeling a bit like older than some of the other like team members and feeling insecure about certain things. And he's also this like perfect mix of being like very supportive, but also still like kind of dominant when he needs to. And I don't just mean in the bedroom, like he's assertive when he needs to, of like lifting her up, but he isn't so beta that he doesn't ever like state what he wants sometimes. And I just loved it. I loved their friendship. And again, that's something I loved about book 1, because those two they were roommates for a while and became really good friends. And in this one, they become such good friends, and it's so beautiful. And so now I'll tell you what did it for me. So we get to the part of the story where like, they need to tell people now, and like, it's going to be out there, and really nervous to tell the dad. And the way that Miles proves to her dad, see, I'm going to cry because this is great. It's so great. About to tell you something Ryan Shea level right now, okay? Yeah, I'm dropping it. Ryan Shea level right here, okay? To prove to her dad that he's serious, because her dad now knows and is like, I trusted you. I'm very disappointed that you wouldn't tell me you were interested in my daughter. I don't know if I can trust you with being a co-captain. Like, but the father is like disappointed. He's not angry. He's not like, get you off my team. Like, none of that. He's just hurt because he loves his daughter and he loves Miles, one of his players who he, has supported. And Miles says in sign language that he cares about his daughter. And we find out that since almost the beginning of when Miles met her, he started taking sign language classes and actually like bribed the whole class not to tell anyone that he was taking sign language classes. And this was before he ever knew that they could be more than friends. He started taking classes. And so he's able to prove to her dad. And when he signs to her dad, the dad is literally like, shit. Because he's like, oh, you're not good enough for my little girl. And he's like, I know, but like, I really love her. And so then the dad can't do anything but like, I'm still not making you co-captain right now because I don't trust you, but you'll get there. You'll get there. And Miles is like, that's okay. It's more important that we're all right. I want her more than that. And then when he proposes to her, of course, he uses sign language to do it. And I was a puddle, you guys. I was a puddle. So I knew this was going to be 5 stars for most of it because it was just so great. And when the instant that he started signing to her dad, I just started bawling. And I was like, this is what I love. This is what I love. And we can absolutely say like that should be the bare minimum. You should learn the language of your love. Absolutely. But here's the thing. It's not even for certain that she'll need sign language, right? Like her family learned it just in case, right? She can read lips very well. She can hear pretty well. It's just that it may someday get to the point where she can't hear. And that's something she's very insecure about. And the fact that he didn't put any pressure on her by telling her he was doing this, he didn't make her be the one to teach him. He went and did it himself. And honestly, I like it even more kind of than Ryan Shea doing it. Sorry, I don't mean to invoke his name in such a way like that. But I might like it even more than that. So that's still super cute. Absolutely. But I am so not denigrating that. I just mean the way that for a year he's been taking classes so he can get good enough to sign to her and propose to her and prove that he's in it. Her own mother hasn't learned sign language or learned even the simplest things about, hey, please look at me when you talk and like, don't take me to places with all this background noise. Her own mother won't do that. And this guy who is her friend does it. It was a 6-star read, you guys. It was. So, whoo! See, I can gush a lot about these ones. I love it so much. Okay, the last one, though, I won't talk about too much because I just finished this one last week and I talked about it a ton in that video. I talked about it for almost 30 minutes. So, the girlfriend zone I really had to gush about a lot. But this one was Kiss the Villain. And I think we're good now. I think a lot of people have already vented their spleen about it. This one isn't for everyone. Some people will feel like this is copycatting of God of Malice and God of Fury. Sure, I don't feel like it's quite as similar as people try to make it seem. Just because it's MM and like they're both kind of crazy, like it's not the same. The journey that Bran and Nico go on is completely different. In my opinion, it's way more so emotional. There's a reason that one's a 6-star read, but I was still so hooked on Gareth and Caden, and their relationship is just wild. So again, I don't want to go fully into this one because of how much I talked about it, but these two meet in a very interesting way. They actually meet okay, so one of the things I didn't love about this is I thought that this one would be taking place kind of like at the time in between like God of Fury, God of War, right? Because if you know that like God of War has a big time jump and everybody's actually out of school. Nobody's still in school. And this one takes place starting the same ass time pretty much as everybody else's book, okay? We see initiation again. All right? We have initiation night for like a 5th fucking time, okay? I could not be more bored with that damn scene. If I never have to go to the scene where they wear their masks again, it'll be too soon. But we see a very different side of a few things in this one, which this one doesn't start at initiation, but we see initiation later. But it starts actually at a party that Gareth sneaks into, and he's there to actually embarrass a guy, okay? And he is going to he actually uses poison. Not poison, sorry. He uses drugs to drug this guy, and he's going to make it look like he had sex with a guy. Now, he is not out as gay or bi or anything, but he knows that that would be like the most humiliating thing to happen to this dude. So he has drugged him, and his plan is to kind of like pull up the guy's clothes, and like he has a lube that looks like cum, and he's going to literally drip it on the guy, make it look like he can't. So it's humiliating, okay? That's what Gareth is planning to do, okay? So still basically a sexual assault, you know, to lay the guy down and take a photo of him looking like he's jacking off over this guy. So it's not like Gareth's an angel, okay? He is no angel at all. But when he goes into this room where he's seen the guy that he drugged go into, it's not the man he thinks it is. It's actually Caden. And Caden quickly turns the tables on Gareth. And very quickly, we have almost a God of Malice type beginning, which again is why a lot of people are saying they're similar. I've said they're similar in the fact that Gareth literally is face fucked by Caden. And Caden, who isn't even like gay himself, it's a total power move what he's doing. And he's like, you were going to rape this guy. And now Gareth can't really say like, no, I was just going to humiliate him. Like he's literally caught pretty much with his dick in his hands to do this like fake assault, right? And Caden punishes him by face fucking him. And I think he takes a picture of him. And he's like, you're lucky I'm letting you live. You'll suffer with this. And so it is wild because you're just like, whoa, this scene, like, holy crap. And then Gareth goes home and actually like he hurts himself after this. So self-harm is a huge trigger warning for this because he's so like disgusted by all of it and it's just like, what the fuck? And so literally trying to like clean himself, he's very much hurting himself. And the thing is though, again, this is where some of the God of Fury connections come in. It's not quite the same because Bran is not Gareth and Gareth is not Bran. So like, I don't feel the same type of empathy for him because he literally was going to assault someone. So it's this game she's playing with you of like, wow, this is going to be like toxic AF. So yeah, that's our first meeting of these two. Because again, this is before school has started, this party is. Now we have the first day of classes and Gareth discovers that Caden is his law professor, right? So this is what we knew going into this because we'd heard about Gareth being into kind of this professor in a previous book. And again, these are all overlap. So we have like Nico actually discusses his interest in like Bran, like with, so like all that stuff is going on at once. All those things are happening. And where was I going with it? But anyway, so yeah, he discovers this guy is his professor. And Caden definitely has other reasons for being where he's at right now than just being a law professor. He's not, I mean, obviously we know he's not some innocent dude after what he did to Gareth. And why and how did he know that Gareth was even there to do something to this guy that he was planning to do it to? So all of this is just, it's wild. And then again, like we have initiation and Caden actually sneaks into it and also like assaults Gareth again when they're there. And one of the jokes literally is like, it's surprised that nobody all won the initiation because there's so many people getting fucked in the woods, like who was stopping people from getting anywhere. So anyway, this couple is absolutely volatile and Caden really is fucking with Garrett's head. We don't know why or like what he's trying to do to him, but he wasn't planning to use like sexual things as a way to do that. Like that wasn't his plan. And he doesn't understand himself why he's so attracted to Garrett. Again, he's never been especially attracted to men before. He actually was married before to a woman who is dead now, so he is a widower as well. So yeah, there are just a lot of layers of things going on. And what I will say is, to me, this was probably the darkest one for what the couple is like together of all that I've read in Legacy of the Gods, because there's really like a lot of fucked up stuff that goes on. And that is why, you know, you'll see some people saying like how toxic and icky this relationship felt. And it may feel that way to a lot of people. Like, they're not wrong to feel that. But I think to say that Rena Kent did something wrong because she wrote a twisted romance, I'm never going to co-sign that. Because to say that just because it's an couple, they both have to be nice and sweet and perfect to each other. I mean, you point out to me what's wrong about that. Like, dark romance authors are not responsible to have to write ideal relationships of any sex or gender of people being paired together. That's why it's dark romance, right? And it's also fiction, so she can write whatever she wants in that regard. And what I particularly like, and I've shared this before about what specifically in dark romance does to me, is it allows an author to really go wild. Because when you have two men who are both pretty like volatile and push back on each other, things can get absolutely crazy like that, you know, in a way that with an MF couple, not that it never has, like there are some that go wild that way, but it's just more of a like, it feels like more of an even playing field, like the mind games and the physical games, and like they can really, you know, fight each other in some of these in a way that in an MF wouldn't be believable, really, right? So this was just wild. And yeah, and then it has some of the classic Rena Kent things you want, like when the sweet stuff comes in. You know, we got a good old third act kidnapping and some serious fallout from that. But again, I cannot overemphasize in this one, the self-harm is intense. And it's different than the type that Bran has done, of course, because they're not, you know, copy cutters of each other. That's why I'm saying this is not a copy of God of Fury at a lesser level. It is a different story. The similarities are the, you know, bi awakening of some or the gay awakening of some, but that's in so many romance, right? And the first scene, again, did remind me of God of Malice a lot, and it hooked me when it did, because it's still totally different. I mean, you know, Glyn in that has no way to fight back and nothing to, like, she has no way but to just submit. Whereas in the power play between Caden and Gareth, like, it is so different. So, anywho, I was into it and I gave this one 5 stars. And in a lot of aspects, I will say, and this was, I saw someone else do this in a review, it maybe is more of a 4-star book to me now that I've sat on it. You guys know, when I listen to the audio, when I rocket through one of those, like, I'm on a high. Like, the audio duet narration with a full cast, like, oof, I am in it when we do one of those, right? So in it. But also because of some of the people with their homophobic ratings, which I don't care. Not all of them are, because again, people can dislike a book and it not be because it's a gay couple or queer couple. Like, they can. But they're legitimately saying in their reviews that they're disgusted that this one's an and that it's wrong and shame on Rena Kent. So I'm sticking with my 5-star rating for this to in some ways counteract some of the hate, at least. I can never counteract it all, but to counteract some of it, at least, I'm like, it's gonna stay at a 5-star for me. And I will be rereading it actually in April because I need to annotate it. And I'm interested in how I'll feel the second time around. Also, I won't be listening to it because I'll be reading with my eyes, how I'll feel then. Because with God of Fury, I loved it even more when I read it that way. And maybe I will with this one too, when I'm forced to slow down how I read it. But all right, we're at an hour. Time to cap this up. But again, if you want to know more about all the books I read this month, because there were other 5 and 4.5 star reads, check out my weekly wrap-ups here. I do also have a playlist of all of my monthly wrap-ups. I've started making a playlist of that. And as well, I do have links to these 5 books that I talked about if you want to buy one of my favorites. Check it out. Thank you so much for watching, friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.